Welcome to my YouTube channel, Computers, Applications, Family, and More. In this video, I will cover some of the basic concepts of keto and how it works for losing weight. If you have a clear understanding of keto and the processes I use, it will make the journey a lot easier. When I started to really understand keto, my diet and what I needed to do started to make sense. At one time during my diet, I was actually losing a pound or two at night when I slept, and I was amazed. But I understood why because I learned about keto at the most basic level. I'll go over this later in this presentation. Now let's go to disclaimers. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not an expert on anything in this presentation, just like I said in the first video that I created. I'm adding this statement though. Check with your doctor if you have any concerns or health questions. Don't make assumptions. All right, any actions you take based on this presentation are yours and yours alone. All right, let's go over a couple definitions really quickly here. Some keto basics. All right, it's a term for a low carb diet. The idea is for you to get more calories from protein and fat and less from carbohydrates. You cut back most on the carbs that you are eating, like that are easy to digest, like sugar, soda, pastries, and white bread. All right, here's another one that I kind of like. Why does the body go into fat burning mode? The body gets its energy by burning sugar, usually derived from carbs. But when the body runs low on sugar during a fast or even during really strenuous exercise, it enters a kind of starvation mode. When that happens, the body starts saving up its remaining reserves of sugar, reaching into its fat cells, and starts burning fat for energy. And that's exactly what we want. Now, I'm going to give you an oversimplified explanation of those two statements. A keto diet reduces the sugars in your body, which your body normally burns first, ignoring the fat in your body. By eliminating the sugars, your body burns fat, which is the ultimate goal. This works, and I can validate it from my keto diet. If you look at the picture, it's a very simplified picture. Your your uh, your energy is taken from the sugars at first, and you see that in yellow. When those are gone, it goes directly to the fat, and that's kind of the stage we want to be in. But it's a lot more complicated than that, and you'd have to actually do some research on the internet if you really want to get into the scientific way of this working. Okay, let's start some beginning steps. You need to prepare for the journey, know your foods, set a reasonable goal, and you need to have some sort of metrics and tools to use to make this successful. All right, let's start off with preparing for the journey. First, you need to make sure you are ready in a good frame of mind, ready to do this. It's not just a game. This is some serious stuff. So make sure you're serious, and then you need to set a reasonable goal. Don't set a goal like I want to lose 50 pounds in 10 days. That's not going to happen. Okay, so set something reasonable, and I'll go over some of my goals with you just so you can kind of see what I used as a benchmark. Okay, what I did to set my benchmark is I started with this chart. It's a BMI calculator USA chart, and I've got the link down at the bottom for you if you want to go to this site. I'm 5'7". If you look at the 5'7" row, I have it highlighted. I was at 180. And if you look at the vertical column, you can see I was at that number 28 right here in the yellow. That means I was overweight, but I was actually on the verge of going to obese. So I wanted to make some changes. So I set my goal at something I thought was reasonable, and that was 150. And you can see here at the 150 mark is healthy, but it's on the high range of healthy. I don't want to get skinny. I want to just be healthy, and that's kind of how I set my goal. It's up to you. This is a personal choice, and you need to do what you think is right for you. Now, you need to know your foods. You need to know the difference between good carbs and bad carbs. This slide's a little bit high level because I don't know a lot of what it's actually talking about. I mean, some of it's straightforward, but you got to be low in calories. That makes sense. You got to be low in salt, sodium, and fat, and no refined sugars and grains. That makes sense. Bad carbs, of course, are high calories. We should all know that, and sugars, and high in salt and saturated fat and trans fat. But here's a chart that's a little more simple to understand. These are the foods you need to be eating when you're on a low carb diet. Vegetables, whole fruits, lentils, kidney beans, peas, nuts, seeds, whole grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, beef, chicken, lamb, pork, bacon, sausage, fatty fish, white fish, crab, lobster, and a lot of other seafood items on this chart. So that's kind of your baseline of what you should be eating. You'll notice there's a lot of things missing from this chart. So here's a list of all the bad foods that you need to avoid on your diet. And this was the hardest part for me, and I'm sure it will be the hardest part for you. You can't be drinking sugary drinks, Coke, Pepsi, vitamin waters full of sugars. You need to stay away from those. Just drink water or make some lemon water or something. Fruit juices, those sound healthy, but they have a lot of sugars. White bread, we kind of covered a little bit of that. That's high. Pastries, cookies, and cakes, ice cream, candies, and chocolate. Those are all my favorites, and I could eat those all day long, every day. So you need to prepare yourself to reduce or eliminate these, at least at the beginning of your diet. And then they throw in here French fries and potato chips. They're just not good for you on this diet, so stay away from those items. And you'll learn more as we go along. Now, metrics and goals. Let's talk about that a little bit. You need to know your goal. You need to set a reasonable goal. I talked about that. Don't set something at 100, lose 50 pounds, overnight. It's not going to work. Metrics. You need to use tools to track your progress. You need to measure your weight on a continuous, if not daily basis. You need to count your carbs and you need to track your meals. It's so important. Here's a statement by Peter Drucker, a famous management consultant. I modified it for this. You can't manage your diet if you don't measure it. You have to know what it is you're eating and where you're headed during this diet. It's very important. It's probably one of the key items of this whole presentation. So I suggest you get set to track what you're doing. Now, let's talk about tools a little bit here. The tools needed to track your goal. You need a scale, some kind of activity tracker, and some kind of a meal tracker. I picked the ARIA scale, which is from Fitbit, and I have a Fitbit watch. They integrate very good, and I can step on the scale and it automatically updates my Fitbit application. Of course, I have to hit the save button with my daily weight. That way I don't have to write it down or remember it because I tend to forget it during the day if I don't put it down immediately. And then you need something to track your meals. I use Carb Manager because it's very handy and it gives you a lot of information on the nutrients in the food. It's well worth your time to get something, and there's plenty of stuff out there. So now let's kind of wrap this up a little bit because I want to make sure you're all on the right track. But you need to make sure you have the tools. You don't have to go out and purchase things. You can do this all manually. Years ago, I used to do this manually and carry a notepad with me, and I marked everything down. But it is critical to have the facts. If you don't know your status, you're not going to know why you gained weight, why you lost weight, a whole bunch of other things that are really important through this process that you need to know. I will tell you one thing. I went down to 143. You'll see on this chart. I only wanted to go down to 150. I don't feel comfortable at 143, even though it's lower than I want it to be. I want to gain and get back up to 150. And I'm on that trek right now. So I'll also cover that in the last video because actually, now that I got down this low, it's a little bit difficult for me to start gaining weight again. So I'll explain that and the whys of that in the final video.